Yeah.
Hello and welcome to Green and Gold Radio. I'm your host, William Plavin Masters, here with our very special guest, St. Ed's principal, Mr. McKenna. In this episode, we will be discussing how school-wide changes made due to COVID-19 will affect students academically. How are you doing today, Mr. McKenna?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm doing good. So, how have teachers adapted their teaching methods to work around COVID?
So that's a great question, and I think education over the course of the last 6 months has gone through a pretty significant transition, and obviously, when the world went remote with its learning, teachers, rightfully so, were viewed as superheroes because they were asked to change everything that they did, and really had a day or two to do it, and it was such a Herculean task. And it's great that we've had the summer to step away from that and say, all right, what did we learn from that would enhance the way that we operate in person? And also, what did we learn in the event that we would ever have to go remote again that would be a more effective replacement for remote learning now that we've had time to think about it? And so, one thing is for certain, and I think we all feel this, it was a reminder that relationships are truly at the heart of really great education. And the teacher being in relationship with the student being in relationship with his classmates and peers, that really drives learning. And I think St. Ed's has done this well for a number of years, and I think we'll see this across many schools. But the teacher, in a lot of ways, is the coach. And even if you think of what you're doing right now, you haven't taken a podcasting class, but a school like ours provides you with the resources to be able to explore something that you're passionate about, and we coach you through that and help kind of guide you on the path. But think of how much learning happens between just you and your peers. When
Absolutely.
You talk about something interesting and you have a friend who's like, I'm interested in that too. Have you checked this out? Have you taken this approach? Have you done it this way? And in order to be able to do that, we have to be in relationship with each other to do that effectively. And I think that was really highlighted through the shelter in place.
Oh, of course, I absolutely agree. So I know that the school has adjusted its schedule. So what will the academic schedule look like through phase one?
Yeah, that's a great question. And our schedule, even in phase one, throughout the entire year, will not really change. So the schedule that we set will be the set schedule for the remainder of the year. But we also sought to keep things as simple as possible and have the fewest number of modifications possible. So obviously, as everyone knows, we've delayed our start until September 16th. It's about a month later than we would typically start. But we also wanted to ensure that all of our students were not just getting the same number of instructional hours as past years, but we wanted to make sure we had more instructional hours. And the reason we wanted to make sure we had more is there's very likely to be remediation needed across the board coming out of last spring. And so we wanted to make sure there was ample time to be able to do that. So instead of having 5 65-minute classes a day, we'll have 6 one-hour classes a day. So the rhythm of the day will change a little bit. It won't change dramatically. The flow of our schedule will operate the same way. And I think from a student perspective, it'll feel very much like the St. Ed's that you left in March.
Right. And if a student has to stay home because of a fever and or symptoms of COVID, what can they expect in terms of completing their assignments?
Yeah, so we have made really significant investments over the summer to make sure that if a student is not feeling well or for some reason has to stay home, that he's going to be well taken care of and that experience is a seamless experience. So all of our classrooms have been outfitted with technology called Padcasters. It's an iPad on a specialized rig that will allow us to live cast in a very simple fashion all of our classes. So if you had to learn at home one day, you would log into your class just like you would walk into your class in person, and you would receive all of your instruction live from your teacher, just as your classmates in school would be receiving. And you would participate in all of the group work that students would be doing. You'd be responsible for all the homework that they're doing, but you would still have the support of the teacher. And we've been doing a lot of work with our teachers this summer about making that experience as seamless as an experience as possible. So, we're very used to, in a traditional school environment, having some instruction and then maybe breaking off into groups to do some group work. And that will change a little bit this year because of physical distancing and keeping everybody safe. But the outcome doesn't have to be different because we're all used to utilizing this technology. So it would be very easy for you to jump on a Hangout with someone who's across the room or even 6 feet away from you in the classroom. And if someone's learning at home, they can join that Hangout as well. And you're having that collaborative group time and still, really operating at the heart of how we want to operate from a curricular standpoint.
Right. Do you think that St. Ed's will keep this in place even post-COVID for students who have to stay out sick?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's one of the things. Innovation always arises from challenge, right? And so it's very clear that right now our world is in the midst of a very difficult challenge, but we're seeing all of this innovation that's coming out of it. And there are things that we have an instinct for that become pretty easy for us when we do it over and over again, year after year. And a situation like this, as challenging as it's been, has provided us with the opportunity to say, hey, is there a way that we can do this different? Is there a way that we can make a dramatic enhancement to how we're operating in the classroom, even how we're operating from an event standpoint or an athletic standpoint, a co-curricular standpoint? So for instance, we had to make a pretty dramatic change to our graduation and baccalaureate mass this year for the class of 2020. And we wanted to make that as special an event for that class as we possibly could. And the outcome was phenomenal. It took a lot of work. There was lots of planning involved. But at the end of that experience, I think we all looked around and said, maybe this is the better way to do graduation and baccalaureate mass. Maybe it's a more meaningful way. And I think we'll see more and more of those situations arise as we come back to school where things we're having to do because we're being forced into them ultimately become pretty dramatic enhancements to what we've been used to doing.
Right. It's amazing that you guys were still able to hold a graduation for the class. I know a lot of schools in the Ohio area didn't have that for them, and they just had the degrees shipped to the students instead of a big gathering of people spending time together. And I really appreciate doing that for the students.
Yeah, I think for our standpoint and our philosophy with everything that we're doing right now is we want to provide the fullest extent of the experience that we're safely able to. Right. And so for that particular event, we spent a lot of time focused on safety and working with public health officials and doctors to ensure that what we were doing was a safe approach. But also ensuring that we could still provide the recognition for our graduating seniors that they were deserving of after their 4 years at St. Ed's.
Absolutely.
And I think that approach will be a model for how we move forward with schooling.
Right. And speaking of moving forward with schooling, how will the course content change in the coming weeks?
I don't know that you'll see a dramatic change in course content. I think what students will see is a continued evolution of approach. We're at an advantage as an institution that we have been evolving academically for the last decade, and having students focus on the type of collaboration, communication, skill building that's necessary for you to be successful at the next level. That all aligns well with the protocols that we need to follow to keep schools safe for everybody. So, I don't know that you'll see a dramatic difference in terms of the way you're learning. You might see some of the semantics of approach be slightly different and some modifications there, but all of our students are going to have a full and robust St. Ed's academic experience.
Right. So you've implemented a new and improved PowerSchool system. Could you just describe how that's going to work?
Yeah. So the PowerSchool, it's called PowerSchool Unified Classroom. This is not something that arose as a need from COVID-19. It's something that was in the works and actually part of the school's broad strategic plan. And the focus on that was making sure that the communication tools that we have to engage with our constituency, so students, parents, faculty, and staff, were operating as efficiently as possible. So in years past, you would go to PowerSchool to, for all the resources for your class, for the learning management system side of your class. And PowerSchool is a phenomenal tool, and it worked very, very well for that approach. But our student information system, where you would get your grades and progress and attendance, was happening in another system. So you'd have to log in to another place to see, if I did something around these resources in the learning management system and I want to see what my performance was, I have to go into an entirely different system that's set up in a completely different way to have an understanding of how I'm growing as a student. And so we wanted to integrate those so that it's a much more seamless experience for everybody, parents, students, faculty, and staff. And it's a significant job to do that. It was months of planning and implementation, and with anything that's new, there are going to be little hiccups and bugs, but I think everybody is going to experience a much better, just a system for understanding how you learn and how you're assessed in that learning, because all of it will be housed under one umbrella.
Right. And how would you recommend that students academically approach this year with all the changes and challenges that may come?
So I think there's a couple ways to approach things. One is setting reasonable expectations, not only for yourself but for what this experience is going to be. And it's going to be a new and unique experience for everyone who's involved. No one in the world has faced a school year like the one that we're about to face. But the advantage that we have at St. Ed's is we know that we're a nimble community, we're a creative community, and we're always a community that rises to challenges. And this is a challenge that we're going to be able to rise to. So, setting that expectation and managing those expectations is going to be really important. Taking things on a day-to-day basis is going to be really important too. So if you think about how much the world is changing on a daily basis and how much new information is driving the differences in how we're living, as humans, we like to plan, and we like to plan out as long as we're able to. And this goes in alignment with the expectation setting. So we set these detailed plans, and then when the plans fall apart and our expectations not met, it leads to disappointment and frustration. If you just shift your mindset a little bit and know, things are changing on a daily basis, and I'm okay with things changing on a daily basis, and I know that I'm part of a community that's nimble and creative, and we're going to work through this together, it just changes the way that you approach things. And so, focusing on managing those expectations and living in the day, let's get through today, then we'll get through tomorrow, and then we'll get through the next day. I think that will help everybody in a pretty important way.
Absolutely. Thank you for answering these questions about the academics of the St. Edward's school year, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, this has been Green and Gold Radio, and this is William Plavin Masters signing off.